Hello, my most fabulous art friends. Today, I'm going to model how to draw a Wayne Thiebaud style cake. Now, this may take quite a bit of time, but as long as we follow along, each cake will be fabulous and unique just the way that you make it. Before we begin, you should have a piece of paper. I have several right here actually, so I have a little bit of a thicker setup. You should have a pencil and you should have an eraser. It's okay if your pencil has an eraser on it. Sometimes I like to use the extra eraser. I'm going to hold my paper landscape style, not portrait style. Portrait style will give me room for more layers if I wanted to make, say, a 10-layer cake. But at least for the first time that you're learning, it helps to make the wider cake as it's easier to understand how this works. So here we go. I'm turning my paper just a little bit. It's easier for me to draw when it's angled a bit, but I will turn it back straight so you can see exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start by making a sideways oval across the middle of the paper. I'm going to do this directly in the middle of the paper. Now I know that some friends are, but Miss Fontaine, where will I put the extra layers? You'll have room for at least a second layer if you'd like to. So I'm going to start by making a very light oval right there in the center. All right. I'm going to take my oval and I'm going to create two vertical lines coming out of either end of it. I should try to make them slightly even, but it's okay if they're a little bit off. I'm going to continue by creating a curved line, just like this curved line, to close the bottom of my cake. Now, my next step is where things can get a little tricky. I'm going to create a triangle, but only the top two lines of the triangle, the ones that kind of make this shape. I'm going to use this as the bottom of my triangle, but I'm going to imagine that I squashed the triangle a little bit. So I'm going to go up like that, and then just down like that. Okay. I'm going to create two vertical lines coming out of either end of my triangle down to the bottom of my cake. I'm going to add a third line very lightly because it will be erased from the center of my triangle down. This is going to keep the slice cut out of my cake very even. I'm going to choose a point somewhere over here. I'm going to make a tiny little dot, nothing crazy, to create a second triangle. Again, using this as the bottom, but this will be my midpoint. So I'm going to go over and then back down. Now here's where some of the interesting parts come in. I need to do some erasing, but I need to erase very specific lines so that I don't lose the cut of my cake. So I'm going to mark the lines that I'm going to erase first, and then I'll show you how I'm going to erase them. I'm going to erase this line, this line, this line, this line, and that line right there. Only the lines that I touched will be erased. I know I said we'd be erasing this middle line, but we're actually only erasing part of it. Everything under that bottom triangle is going to get erased. Kind of looks like a big block of cheese now. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to make those lines visible again. Some of them got erased by accident. That happens, not a big deal. It's always easier to go back and fix those after the fact. Now, before I create layers in my cake, I am going to put my cake on a plate. Okay, and I didn't leave much room down here to put the cake on a plate, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it so that as if my plate just kind of continues. I'm going to start on the side of the cake, making a rounded line. And the idea is to go down and around up. I'm air drawing, air drawing, air drawing, air drawing, air drawing, air drawing. So that my cake is now on a plate. I can create an outline to my plate. I can decorate my plate. That's really up to you. It's your choice what you would like to do with that. But before you add too many decorations, let's finish the bottom of this cake down here. I need to create layers inside of my cake. Think about sometimes when you cut open a cake and there's maybe vanilla and chocolate and those crunchy things, and then maybe there's a layer of ice cream in the bottom. You can make as many layers as you want. Some people choose just to make 2 or 3. Some people choose to make 10. No matter how many layers you make, your lines have to be at an angle. They have to be diagonal, following the same lines of your triangle. The reason for that is because it will not look realistic if not, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 4 layers. 4 layers means I'm going to need 3 lines. However many layers you choose, you need 1 less line to show those layers. So with my 4 layers, I'm going to make 3 lines on each side. It helps if I do one side first and then connect on the other side. So I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3. Notice how I followed the same line that went right there. And I'm actually going to add another one just because it looks incomplete. All right, artists can change their mind sometimes. Things don't look right. Now I'm going to go right over here and I'm going to create the same line connecting to each of these following this curve. What I've done now makes my cake look a little bit more realistic. These lines tend to be darker than the other ones right now, so sometimes this part will stand out to you, and we'll fix that later on. You don't want to darken too many lines ahead of time, so you can erase lines as you add things to your cake. Something that people love to add to their cake are crumbs right over here. So imagine that someone cut this slice out and they left a few crumbs on the plate. So just by creating a few wiggly bumps, wiggly lines, you create crumbs, as many or as few as you want. Maybe you don't want crumbs. Now, everyone wants to know how to decorate their cake, but before I do that, I'd like to show you how to add a second layer. And the steps that I show you for the second layer can be repeated to create as many layers as you would like on the cake. No one is required to make a second layer. It is a choice. In order to create that second layer, I'm going to need to make another oval shape. I'm going to follow almost the exact same steps, except I won't be cutting a piece out of my cake, and there is some erasing to be done. Right above this line, I'm going to make my other oval. See how close it is to that? I'm going to continue by making those vertical lines, the ones that went straight down that we made before from the edges, but they're going to come into about the middle of my cake. So I'm going to go down, down, and again, I'm going to connect with a curve that matches this curve from the top of that cake. Lastly, to make this second layer look realistic, I'm going to erase this line inside of here. I shouldn't be able to see through the cake. All right, and now I have a 2-layer cake. Again, you can add as many layers as you would like. I'm going to move on to decorating the cake, and you can decorate the cake however you would like. There is no rule when it comes to that. In the building, I actually have several different examples of types of frosting and candies you can put on it. So I'm going to kind of do a little mishmash of a few different things. And it's up to you what you'd like to add or not. You can always look on Google for images of cake decorating, cake designs, to see a lot of different things. A really popular one last year with the third graders, because this is usually done with the third grade, was the drip cake. You know, I know slime is very big. We love that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a drip frosting. So I'm going to come right here, and you have to imagine the cake goes all the way around. So it shouldn't just start somewhere over here because the whole cake should be decorated. So I'm actually going to create kind of this wavy line that stops there. And I'm going to add some more over here. And they don't have to match up because it's that drip. So it's allowed to look a little different. Fine. I like to make my layers match. Some people don't. So I'm going to create the same drip layer up here. And again, the beautiful thing with the drip layer is the drips don't all have to look exactly the same, right? Okay. I'm going to add a design to the actual side of my cake. Notice that I haven't touched the tops yet. I like to save those for last and get all of these details out of the way. In my efforts to show you many different cakes, I'm going to create a lattice going on these. And by lattice, I know you might be thinking of math, but I'm thinking of actually lines that cross over, and people put lattices in their gardens. So all I'm going to do, and of course you could use a ruler if you really wanted to, but I'm going to create lines going across, and then lines going the other way. Notice that I'm not going over the slime or the frosting drip. And that's because that frosting would be covering this part of the cake in reality. So I'm going to come over to this side also. And just as a reminder to all of my friends that are following along with this video, no one has to copy Miss Fontaine exactly. I want you to be creative and have some fun with it. So you can make it however you'd like. You are welcome to copy mine, but no one is required to. All right. So continuing with that lattice line, trying not to connect them to my layers. I don't want to get confused. That can happen sometimes when I go to do my coloring. I'm going to add the same lattice design up here, trying to keep it realistic. And I'm realizing that, sometimes I have to go up a little bit more to make sure that my cake would be decorated properly, right? That those lines would be in the right spots. Moving along. Oops, I should have connected that one. I think this one too. And I'm now going to go the other way. Some of the work when drawing your cake is a little bit tedious. That means it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of little movements to make. And that really depends on what you choose to do with your cake. That's why it's a very unique project. The amount of time you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And every single one of you is capable of making a cake. So now I'm going to move on to decorating the top of my cake. The tops of the cakes have been decorated so many different ways over the years. People have put lollipops in the cake. People have put gumdrops and candies all over the cake. People have put different bits of ice cream and upside down ice cream cones. Lots and lots of different things going on there. So I'm going to actually do gumdrops. That's always been pretty popular. And I want to show you how that's done, especially because the candy comes off the cake a little bit. So when you do gumdrops around the edge of your cake, you have to make sure that you get that corner, right? Because you have to imagine that when the cake was completely decorated, before someone cut into it or before you could see the back of it, it had decoration going all around. Cakes are usually very symmetrical, meaning that they are the same. Okay. I'm going to use my eraser to actually erase any cake lines. My gumdrops are sitting on top of my cake. And then I'm going to create this kind of curved line, which gives my gumdrops a top. It makes them look more 3D, more realistic, just like that. And I can add some powdered sugar to all of them. There we go, just like that. I'm going to add them to the top also. But before I add them to the top, lots of times we like to put candles on the top of our cake. Sometimes people like to put other designs, like I said. I mean, I've even seen cupcakes on cakes. I'm going to put some candles in before I do the gumdrops because I'm thinking about when I look at the cake, the candles would kind of stick out more. And I like to show everyone how to make candles. So I'm going to pretend that this is for, let's say, an 8th birthday cake. Okay, of course, Miss Fontaine picks the most difficult number. I'm going to make the candle 3-dimensional. So again, and this is why those cake lines are so light when you draw them. You really want to make sure that you're able to erase them afterwards. So there's my outline for the 8. I'm lightly erasing that because I will probably see some of it through the candle. Yeah, put that line right back where it was. And I'm going to add a little line that goes down and a little piece like that, showing that the candle is sticking in the cake. I'm going to right up here add the wick. That's the part of the candle that burns. And I'm even going to put a flame on it. Okay, so all I've done there is made my candle, my cake, look very, very realistic. Okay, I'm going to go back to adding the gumdrops everywhere. And again, that's just because I like to make my cakes look similar. You can decorate however you would like. Go through and erase. And again, making them similar to what I have already done. Do they all need to be perfect? No, have fun with it. Add some powdered sugar on those gumdrops. Now, the last thing that I really want to do on this overly decorated cake is I'd like to add a background or put it on a table. Right now, my cake is kind of floating in space. So I'm going to think back to what we did in first grade, Van Gogh vases. We put that line behind them. I think everyone should remember that. I'm going to just create a line right here, air dry, air dry, air dry, right across, and continue the line. And now my cake is sitting on a table. You can decorate the background however you want. People have decorated as a cake shop. People have decorated as a birthday party. Some people have just colored it two separate colors so that it is a table and a cake. But we are looking for this to be completely colored in when it is finished. Okay, so these are the steps to creating the cake. And hold on, let's see what a colored cake looks like. Voila, done, finished cake. I did not get to finish the background, but I did spend an awful lot of time. I used Prismacolor colored pencils to add color to my cake. Um, for those that don't have gray and worry about that, if you wanted to make your platter look silver, this is actually with a black color pencil, just pressing very lightly. Again, like I said before, things are tedious. It did take time to do this lattice design with the color correctly. It did take time to do my layers of chocolate, vanilla, chocolate, vanilla, chocolate. And then I made my crumbs a few different colors. I blended two different browns to create that and then used a lighter shade for the top. Now, crayons or colored pencils would work best. I do not recommend using markers. There are some students that have used markers in the past, and unfortunately, what happens when you use markers is you spend all of this time making these beautiful details. When using markers, sometimes you're going to lose a lot of those details. So, marker, if you really wanted to outline it, on some embellishments, I added some black outline to my gumdrops because I just wanted them to stand out a little bit more. Um, and then I started to add a background. I started to put it in a cake shop. I can't wait to see your cakes. I hope you have a lot of fun creating. Bye.